The camera opens on a dimly lit room, the kind that feels more like a memory than a place, where dust drifts slowly through a single beam of golden light. Morgan Freeman sits in a worn leather chair, his hands folded, his eyes deep and tired in a way only a man who has lived too many lives can be. He doesn't look at the camera at first. He looks past it, as if Rob Reiner were sitting just beyond the lens, waiting for him to finally speak. His voice, usually so calm and commanding, cracks when he says Rob's name. He tells us that for decades, Hollywood saw Rob Reiner as the smiling genius behind timeless films, the man who made people laugh and cry with equal grace. But what the world never saw was the shadow that followed him, a shadow that wrapped itself around everyone who got too close. Freeman leans forward slowly, as if each word weighs 100 pounds. He says Jackie Chan came to him just weeks before Rob died. Jackie, now 71, had aged in a way that made even his famous smile look tired. His body carried the scars of a lifetime of stunts, but it was his eyes that frightened Morgan. They looked haunted, like a man who had seen something he could never unsee. Jackie had just come from visiting Rob in a private clinic in Santa Monica, a place so discreet that even paparazzi couldn't get close. Rob was sick, sicker than anyone in the public knew. Not just physically, but in a way that felt like something inside him was rotting, eating him alive from the inside out. Jackie told Morgan that Rob kept whispering the same sentence over and over, barely able to breathe, barely able to hold on. I never meant for it to go this far. At first, Jackie thought he was delirious, that the medication was making him say strange things. But Rob's grip tightened on his hand, and his eyes filled with tears. He said it wasn't about movies. It wasn't about fame. It was about a choice he made years ago, a choice that ruined lives, destroyed families, and changed the course of Hollywood forever. Morgan pauses, swallowing hard, as if he can still hear Rob's labored breathing. He says Jackie left that clinic shaking. He sat in his car for nearly an hour before he could drive, replaying Rob's words in his head like a broken record. Jackie had worked with Rob on a secret project in the late 90s, something that never saw the light of day. Back then, Jackie was at the peak of his Hollywood crossover, being welcomed into rooms once closed to foreign stars. Rob had promised him something huge, something that would make Jackie not just an action icon, but a respected dramatic actor alongside people like Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep. But that project vanished. Scripts disappeared. Meetings were canceled. Jackie was told it was just Hollywood being Hollywood. Now, sitting beside a dying Rob Reiner, he realized it was all a lie. Rob had buried that project deliberately, using his power to protect someone else, someone far more powerful and far more dangerous. And Jackie, unknowingly, had been the sacrifice. Freeman admits his own voice almost broke when Jackie told him this. Morgan had known Rob for decades. They had shared dinners, laughed about old sets, talked about Clint Eastwood, about how hard it was to stay honest in an industry built on illusions. He never imagined Rob capable of something so cruel. Yet Jackie described how Rob began to cry, real, ugly sobs that shook his frail body. Rob said he had been threatened. He said he had been promised everything would be taken from him if he didn't do what he was told. He named people Jackie had only ever heard whispered in Hollywood backrooms, producers who could make stars disappear, men who once controlled the careers of people like Al Pacino and even Robert De Niro in their younger days. As Freeman recounts this, his eyes fill with tears. He tells us Rob knew he was dying, and that was why he finally wanted to tell the truth. He said he couldn't take the secret with him to the grave. He had lived with it for over 20 years, watching Jackie's career twist into something different than what it should have been, watching families suffer because of a single cowardly decision. Rob even mentioned how his own family had paid the price. His daughter, he said, had grown up in a house filled with unspoken tension, never knowing why her father would wake up screaming some nights, whispering apologies to people who weren't there. Jackie had left that clinic with Rob's last words echoing in his mind. He told Morgan that Rob looked at him with desperate eyes and said, "Please don't let them erase me the way they erased you." Those words haunted Jackie so deeply that he couldn't sleep. He started drinking again, something he hadn't done in years, trying to drown the memories of Rob's trembling hands and broken voice. Freeman looks directly into the camera now, his voice barely above a whisper. He says the world is about to hear something it was never meant to hear, because Rob Reiner's truth isn't just about one man or one mistake. It's about a system that feeds on silence and fear, a system that even legends like Jackie Chan and Morgan Freeman were not immune to. He takes a long breath, as if bracing himself for the pain of what comes next, and says that this is only the beginning of a story that will change how we see Hollywood forever. The silence that followed Rob's final words stayed with Jackie like a wound that refused to heal, and Morgan says it was in that silence that the real nightmare began. Jackie tried to move on, to throw himself back into training, into choreography, into the familiar pain of broken bones and bruised ribs, because physical pain was easier than what was tearing at him inside. But everywhere he went, he kept seeing Rob's face, pale against white hospital sheets, whispering about the lives he had ruined. Jackie began to dig, quietly at first, calling old contacts, producers who owed him favors, assistants who had once worked on that mysterious canceled project. Most of them went cold the moment he mentioned Rob Reiner's name. Some hung up. Others begged him to forget it. One night, Jackie called Morgan, his voice shaking so badly Morgan could barely understand him. He said he had found proof. Not just rumors or half-remembered conversations, but real documents, contracts that had been altered, emails that showed how Rob had been forced to quietly kill the film that was supposed to change Jackie's life. It was a drama about an immigrant family in Los Angeles, inspired by Jackie's own childhood, something raw and honest that would have shown a side of him the world had never seen. Studio executives were terrified of it. They didn't want an Asian action star telling a story that made America look cruel and broken. They wanted him flipping and kicking, not making people think. Rob had tried to fight it first, according to those emails. He argued, he begged, he even threatened to take the project elsewhere. That's when the pressure came down. Morgan's voice grows darker as he explains that Rob was given a choice: destroy the film quietly and keep his career, or watch everything he loved fall apart. Rob chose himself. He signed papers that erased Jackie's project, papers that also locked Jackie into safer, more profitable roles that kept him in a box for the rest of his Hollywood life. Jackie felt betrayed in a way that went deeper than business. He had trusted Rob. He had believed in him the way a younger man believes in a mentor. That betrayal, Morgan says, was like a sickness that spread through Jackie's family. His wife noticed him becoming distant. His son saw him drinking alone in the dark, replaying old VHS tapes of his early films, wondering who he could have been. There were nights Jackie would sit on the floor, holding his head, whispering to himself that he had been robbed of something he never even got the chance to fight for. And then there was Rob's illness. Morgan reveals that Rob didn't just die from what was written on his medical charts. He was dying from guilt. Nurses reported he would wake up crying, calling out Jackie's name, asking if he had forgiven him yet. He refused certain pain medications because he said he deserved to feel everything. His family tried to comfort him, but they didn't know the truth. They thought his suffering was just fear of death. They didn't know he was haunted by the lies he had quietly crushed. Rob asked to see Morgan one last time, but Morgan never made it. By the time he arrived in Los Angeles, Rob had already slipped into a coma. Jackie was there, sitting by the bed, holding Rob's hand the way Rob once held his when he took his dreams away. Jackie whispered that he didn't know if he could forgive him, but he promised he wouldn't let the truth die. Rob's eyes opened just a little, and he squeezed Jackie's hand weakly. Those were the last moments of consciousness Rob ever had. Morgan says Jackie left that room, feeling like a man carrying a bomb in his chest. He knew if he spoke out, powerful people would come for him. He also knew that if he stayed silent, Rob's death would mean nothing. The weight of that choice aged Jackie overnight. Even now, at 71, his body moves slower, not just FR. Old injuries. But from the emotional burden he has been carrying alone, that Freeman's voice breaks as he admits that telling this story might destroy friendships, careers, and even families. But he believes some truths are worth the pain they cause. He looks down at his hands, shaking slightly, and says that what Jackie uncovered was only one piece of a much larger puzzle. a puzzle that reaches into the highest levels of Hollywood and beyond. And somewhere in that puzzle is the reason Rob Reiner died begging for forgiveness. That'd be why the time Jackie realized how deep the lie went, it was already too late to pretend it was just about one lost film. And Morgan says that's when fear truly took hold. Jackie began to notice strange things happening around him. Meetings he never scheduled appeared on his calendar, only to be canceled without explanation. Old friends stopped returning his calls. Even his longtime stunt coordinator quietly told him that people were asking questions about where Jackie had been the night Rob died, as if someone wanted to twist the story into something darker. Jackie called Morgan in a panic, saying he felt like he was being watched. Morgan tried to calm him, but he could hear the terror in Jackie's voice, a terror that came not from broken bones or high falls, but from invisible enemies. Jackie told him he had found another name buried in Rob's old emails, a producer who had once been connected to projects starring people like Leonardo DiCaprio and Julia Roberts, a man who had quietly disappeared from public view years ago after a scandal that was never fully explained. That man, Jackie said, was the one who had threatened Rob. Rob, in his final days, had hinted that this producer was untouchable, protected by money and secrets that could bring down entire studios. He had bragged about ruining careers before, about making actors vanish so complete, that even their own fans forgot them. Rob knew all this and still chose to bow his head. That knowledge had eaten him alive, and now was eating Jackie too. Morgan describes how Jackie started writing everything down, filling notebooks with dates, names, and memories, afraid that if something happened to him, the truth would die with him. Jackie even recorded himself speaking, his voice breaking as he talked about how he had once believed Hollywood was a dream factory, only to discover it was also a graveyard of broken promises. He talked about how his mother used to tell him that no matter how famous he became, he must stay honest. Those words came back to him now like a curse. Rob's family began to feel the fallout as well. His daughter reportedly received anonymous messages telling her to stop asking questions about her father's final days. She had noticed how agitated he was before he died, how he kept muttering about Jackie Chan and something he needed to fix. When she tried to look through his old files, entire folders were missing. Morgan says she called him in tears, asking if he knew what her father had been hiding. He couldn't bring himself to tell her everything. Not why ET'd. As the weeks passed, Jackie's health began to decline. Doctors said it was stress, but Jackie knew it was more than that. He couldn't eat. He couldn't sleep. He kept dreaming that Rob was standing at the foot of his bed, his face full of regret, silently begging him not to give up. Jackie told Morgan he felt like Rob had passed a curse to him, that now he was the one trapped between truth and fear. Morgan himself wasn't safe either. He noticed people he didn't recognize sitting in cars outside his house, pretending to check their phones. Once, a stranger approached him in an airport and whispered Rob Reiner's name before disappearing into the crowd. It sent a chill through him so deep he nearly collapsed. Whoever had controlled Rob was still watching, still protecting their secrets. And yet, despite the danger, Jackie kept pushing. PSA. ID if Rob had been brave enough to confess at the end. Then he owed it to him to finish what he started. He owed it to the young man he used to be, the one who believed his talent could change the world. Morgan's voice trembles as he says that sometimes courage doesn't come from strength, but from being too broken to stay silent any longer. The truth, he warns, is moving closer to the surface now. And when it finally breaks through, it will tear open wounds Hollywood has tried to hide for decades. As the walls began to close in, Jackie made a decision that frightened even himself. And Morgan says it was the most dangerous thing he could have done. He reached out to people who had been burned by the same unseen hand that had crushed his dream. Quietly, carefully, he started reconnecting with actors and filmmakers who had vanished from the spotlight after falling out of favor with powerful producers. Some of them were living in near poverty, their once famous faces now barely recognized. They told Jackie stories that sounded hauntingly familiar. Promises of life, changing roles, followed by sudden cancellations. Whispers of threats. Careers destroyed overnight. One of them was an actress who had once worked with Rob Reiner on a romantic drama in the early 2000s. She told Jackie that Rob had warned her not to push too hard against studio demands, that there were people who could make her disappear. At the time, she thought he was exaggerating. Months later, her film was shelved, and she was quietly blacklisted. Hearing this, Jackie felt a cold wave of understanding. Rob hadn't just betrayed him. He had been living in fear for years, passing that fear on to others. Morgan describes how Jackie began to feel a strange mix of anger and compassion for Rob. Anger for the damage he caused, and compassion for the man who had been too afraid to fight back. Jackie even eyed Rob's grave alone one night, standing there in the dark, whispering that he wished Rob had trusted him enough to tell the truth sooner. He apologized for hating him, and then for still loving him in a way only a friend can. But grief didn't protect Jackie from what came next. He received a letter, no return address, just a few chilling lines telling him to stop digging if he valued his family. His wife begged him to let it go, afraid that their son would be the one to pay the price. Jackie, torn between fear and guilt, told Morgan he felt like he was choosing between being a good father and being an honest man. The weight of that choice nearly crushed him. Morgan himself was confronted by an old studio executive who casually mentioned Rob's death over lunch, smiling in a way that made Morgan's skin crawl. The man said it was tragic how secrets can kill people. That was all. No explanation. Just a warning. Morgan realized then that Rob had never been truly free, not even at the height of his fame. Jackie's health worsened as the stress took its toll. Doctors warned him that his heart couldn't take much more. He joked bitterly that at least if he died, he would finally be at peace like Rob. But in private, he cried, afraid he would never get to tell the truth before it was too late. Freeman says there are moments when history changes, not with explosions, but with whispered confessions. Jackie and Rob were caught in one of those moments, and now the rest of the world was about to feel the shockwaves. The closer Jackie came to exposing what Rob had done and why he had done it, the more his own life began to unravel in quiet, terrifying ways, and Morgan says it was like watching a slow-moving tragedy that no one could stop. Jackie's phone was tapped. He knew it. He would hear faint clicks on the line, and sometimes a strange echo of his own voice. When he mentioned Rob Reiner's name, the line would go dead. Once, he found the notebooks where he had been writing everything down scattered across his UD floor, as if someone had been inside his home while he slept. Nothing was stolen. They just wanted him to know they could reach him. Jackie told Morgan that he felt like he was losing his mind. His wife pleaded with him to let the past go. She said Rob was dead, that nothing could change what had already happened. But Jackie couldn't forget Rob's trembling hand in that hospital bed, or the way he had whispered, "Please don't let them erase me." Jackie felt that if he stayed silent, he would be helping them erase not just Rob, but the truth of who he really was, that Rob's family was suffering too. His daughter began having panic attacks, convinced someone was following her. She had found a single hidden flash drive in one of Rob's old jackets, tucked away in a pocket no one ever checked. On it were voice memos Rob had recorded in the middle of the night, his voice breaking as he talked about Jackie Chan, about the project he destroyed, about how he sold his soul to protect his family. He kept saying he was sorry, over and over, like a prayer that never brought relief. Morgan listened to those recordings with tears in his eyes. He says he could hear the moment Rob realized he was going to die with his secret unless someone else was brave enough to carry it. Rob even mentioned other names, famous ones, people who had also been forced to make impossible choices. One of them sounded eerily like a young Brad Pitt, another like a terrified Winona Ryder in the early days of her career. Hollywood, Rob said, was built on broken hearts and signed confessions no one ever saw. Jackie wanted to release everything. He wanted the world to know. But the threats intensified. One night, his son was followed home from school. Another time, Jackie's car was forced off the road by an unmarked SUV that vanished before the police arrived. Jackie called Morgan shaking, saying he was afraid OB's fate was coming for him too. And yet, in the middle of all this fear, something changed. Jackie stopped running. He told Morgan that if he was going to die, he wanted it to mean something. He wanted Rob's suffering to mean something. He wanted the young actor he used to be, full of hope and dreams, To finally be honored, Morgan's voice grows soft as he says that sometimes the truth demands a sacrifice, and not everyone survives long enough to see justice. Jackie knew that, and still he kept going, because some stories are too painful to leave untold. The night before Jackie was supposed to hand over everything he had, Morgan says the world felt strangely quiet, the kind of quiet that comes before something breaks forever. Jackie sat alone in his study, surrounded by the notebooks, the recordings, the scattered pieces of a life that had been quietly rewritten by fear. He kept replaying Rob's last words in his head, that fragile whisper asking not to be erased. Jackie felt as if Rob's spirit was sitting with him, watching, waiting, hoping. Jackie called Morgan just after midnight. His voice was calm in a way that frightened Morgan more than panic ever could. Jackie said he was tired of running, tired of pretending that success was enough when so much had been taken from him. He spoke about his childhood, about growing up poor and invisible, about how becoming famous was never about money, but about being seen. Rob, he said, had once seen him, and then, under pressure, had chosen not to. That betrayal had left a wound that never healed. He told Morgan that if anything happened to him, the files would be released. He had arranged it all. There was sadness in his voice, but also a strange peace, as if he had finally stopped fighting himself. He said he didn't hate Rob anymore. He understood now that Rob had been trapped, just like so many others, by a system that rewards silence and punishes Kura. Gee, Jackie said forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant refusing to let the pain turn him into something cruel. Rob's daughter called Morgan the next morning, crying. She said she had dreamed of her father standing in a bright light, smiling for the first time in years. He told her that the truth was finally going to be free. She didn't know what it meant, but she felt lighter when she woke up, as if a weight had been lifted from her heart. Jackie, still alive but fragile, checked himself into a private clinic not long after, his heart pushed to the edge by stress and years of buried grief. From his hospital bed, he watched old clips of himself, young and fearless, jumping from impossible heights, laughing at danger. He wondered how a man who could face death so easily had been so afraid of telling the truth. Morgan ends his confession with tears in his eyes, saying that some stories never get a clean ending. Rob Reiner died with regret in his heart, and Jackie Chan is living with scars no camera could ever capture. The truth they shared is messy, painful, and unfinished, just like life itself. But it exists now, and that means something. It means that even in an industry built on illusions, there are still moments of honesty that break through the darkness, even if they come too late to save everyone. The conclusion comes quietly, the way real truths always do, not with applause or headlines, but with a soft ache in the chest that never quite goes away. Morgan Freeman says he still hears Rob Reiner's voice some nights. Not the confident director the world knew, but the frightened man in that hospital bed, begging not to be forgotten. Rob is gone now, buried beneath years of success and scandal. Yet his final confession has changed something in those who heard it. It changed Jackie Chan most of all. Jackie eventually left the clinic weaker but clearer, walking slower than he used to, his eyes filled with a sadness that no amount of fame could ever erase. He released what he had, not in a loud, explosive way, but carefully, piece by piece, letting the truth find its own way into the world. Some people believed him. Some called him bitter. Some were too afraid to listen. But Jackie didn't need everyone to understand. He only needed Rob's ghost to know that he tried. Rob's family, especially his daughter, finally learned the full story. It broke her heart to know how much her father had suffered in silence, how many nights he spent drowning in regret. But it also gave her a strange kind of peace. She said it was easier to love a flawed man who tried to make things right at the end than a perfect one who never told the truth at all. Morgan sits back in his chair, his eyes glistening as he admits that Hollywood will probably never fully reckon with what it did to men like Rob and Jackie, to the dreams it quietly crushed and the lies it taught them to live with. But he believes that somewhere beyond the cameras and the contracts, there's a place where those secrets no longer have power. The story doesn't end with justice or triumph. It ends with something more fragile and more human. A dying man's apology, a wounded friend's forgiveness, and a truth finally spoken, drifting out into the world like a whisper that refuses to be silenced.